This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Final hour OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel later in the hour. Dave Naylor from Buffalo ahead of the Monday Nighter. Double shot on TSN tonight. Bengals, Commanders, your Commanders. Owen Wilson, love the Commanders. And Bills, Jags tonight. So we'll get to that a little bit later in the hour. And Chris Johnston coming up here in a moment. And the Leafs are, I guess, 0-1 in the preseason. I guess they lost in overtime. So they got a point last night. Got to have a point in the preseason.
I was so
0-1.
excited. My wife said to me, "Oh, you must be so excited. Hockey's back." And I'm like, I am. I really am excited. Then halfway through the first period, I'm like, let's get to the regular season. Let's get to the regular season.
Yeah.
It's just preseason is tough. I mean, it only means something for a couple guys trying to earn a spot.
Yeah. Ultimately, that's kind of what you get, right? Try to be healthy.
You'd still like to see a good game, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought again last night was a fun game. Doesn't mean it was a well executed X's and O's type game, but when you get a 6-5 score and a bunch of lead changes and overtime, the OT winner was a beautiful goal.
Yeah,
like it was a great goal, man. Yeah. And Pacioretty got on the board a couple of times. Like I think you got your money's worth last night if you're in the building.
I thought, well, if you're in the building, absolutely. But it depends on what you're looking for. Like if you were looking to see, Matthews play, he scores a goal, but I thought those guys just kind of did what they needed to do to kind of get into game shape, game form. But, I was watching Pacioretty. I was watching Joseph Wall. I was watching, Easton Cowan, some of the younger guys. Mm-hmm. And then
what do you think of Willie up the middle of the ice? You think he looked out of place, or
I don't know. I couldn't tell. I didn't think he had much. Willie. There's games where he really looks impactful, and there's other games where he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to fill a jersey here." And I didn't notice him that much. Yeah, he scored a beautiful goal. It's a nice, strong play to the net. Mm-hmm. He's good at that. But I didn't put it this way. He wasn't noticeable for me. I thought there were other guys that were more noticeable.
Oh,
he really has to. If he wants to do this. And I don't know who in the organization, centerman-wise, would understand it. Well, there's a bunch of people that would, but the center ice position, like his route running has got to be way different. Like there was a couple times neutral ice regroups where if he's going to be the center iceman and the guy that's going to have the puck coming through the neutral zone, he really has to understand the timing of helping his defenseman. Because there was a couple times as a winger, you want to slash and just fly in the neutral zone. But as a centerman, you got to stay patient and say, I got to go really slow here to get that puck and be in a support position and then have it and then distribute it to a winger.
Yeah.
But he's not a natural centerman. He doesn't want to do that. His natural instinct is to say, I got to shoot through the neutral zone and hopefully somebody can zing a pass up and I can cut through the middle for a breakaway. The idea of being a centerman and the routes are completely different. And whether he's going to understand that or want to do it is going to be a major factor in this working for him.
100%. I mean, I think that's really all of it. Is you can focus on will he win draws? Well, you can have Domi take draws.
Yeah.
You can have other guys take draws. What does he do in the offensive zone? Once you get down there, guys know where they're going to operate. You get free ice. You're going to make plays. He's going to have the freedom to do whatever he wants below the red line.
And, Hayes, you talk about it all the time, being put in positions to succeed, the best position to succeed for a player. That's why I kind of don't really understand this. He is fantastic at playing with a gifted playmaking center at slashing through the neutral zone and getting open and using his shot and playing off a centerman, and that's his best strength. Like, that's his ability, what he brings to the table, not the other way around. I'm not sure if this is just we don't want John playing there and we got to try this because we have no other options, because I don't think it's best suited for him.
Yeah, I think it's just we're talking about it one game in. We got to let him play there. And
I know, but all accounts, Jamie, they said they're going to try this for 20 games.
I think they have to, though. I do. I think you have to commit to it for a number of regular season games and then put it to bed or live with it, one way or the other.
You could have a little bit of the Edmonton model, too, where, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins goes center, wing, kind of versatile. Same thing, Draisaitl, you start moving guys around. That's kind of what I think they're thinking, but you have to be versatile enough to be really good at that position. Now, Willie's a really good player, but is he a really good centerman? We know he's a really good winger. Like, center is a different animal. Oh, you talk about it all the time. Ray talked about it last week. It's hard work, and it's not the sexiest of work where you got to work your way back. You got to hold support down low. You got to win loose puck battles down low. Like, Matthews is good at it because he's 6'3" and 220 pounds, and he can absorb contact and use his speed to get out of it. Willie can do that as well. But does he want to every shift? Right, well, that's the thing, too, that matters.
I don't even know if I'm not sure if I would phrase it as does he want to. It's just does he visualize the game that way? I mean, Austin, that's what he knows. That's how he operates. That's the world he's in. He knows his angles. He knows the support. And he knows how to feed off that and read the play appropriately so he can get back into the neutral zone. And he leads the rush a lot of times through the neutral zone. Like, you're going to get both opportunities. And that's what I think is the bigger question is can Willie get to a point where he can visualize the game from that position and still be effective? Right. And some of it will be do you want to, can't, but I think he's a big boy. He's invested in this team. He's invested in trying to win. I don't think it's going to be I'm quitting on being the third man lower. I don't think that's going to happen with Willie. I think it's more can he be comfortable in still doing what you're talking about and not overthinking it and then taking himself out of those offensive opportunities.
Right.
Because, the pure centermen that play it their whole lives, that's the world they live in. They just know it. Like, they just read the play that way. And
you're right.
This is a bit of an adjustment. I mean, and we'll see if he's got it in him to do that. Here's Chris Johnston, our TSN hockey insider, joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. What did you make of Nylander's first look at center ice last night?
I think the best I can say is that I do really have the sense this is going to be a longer look than one look. Where, in the past, I think part of the issue is that Willie has felt, every time it's happened that every moment, every shift, every period is broken down to a degree that, will it or won't it. And, a big part of the discussion that happened between him and Craig Berube was, I'm happy to do this. I think he actually is willing to embrace the challenge, but he wants time to get comfortable there. He wants to almost make some mistakes. He wants there to be some footage where maybe they can point out, something that wasn't working well. And so I don't have maybe too much of an impression of the first game. I think what's most notable here is that I really do believe this is going to be more of an extended look for him and to see if, because you can imagine if you're doing anything different in your job, whatever it might be, I think it's going to take some time. And he's played wing in the NHL for a long, long time, had a ton of success. There was that contract he signed last year while playing as a winger. But I think for the organization moving forward, they view it as an important thing for him to play down the middle, and I think they're going to give him a good run at it.
What did you make of last night's game as some of the guys who were trying to make an impression outside of the guys, a guy like Willie who's got his guaranteed contract, returning vets, the Easton Cowans, the Max Paciorettys, guys like that?
Well, you got to feel good if you're Pacioretty, right? I mean, we all expect the guy's got basically a contract here, more or less sewed up, just, unless something goes terribly wrong. And obviously when you come away from a game, even if it's a 6-5 sort of up and down game, not one that the team can hang their hat on, but you've scored a couple goals and had 6 shots, I believe it was, on net. I think that all that is positive for him. I mean, it's one of those games where you almost don't want. I feel like you don't want to take anything negative away from it, because I think everything negative you might say has a but. I mean, these guys have been in camp for 4 days. Yeah, we know, a lot of the Leafs players specifically are on the team that have very little to prove, but you're looking to see what the others do well that maybe aren't in that position. And so for Pacioretty, I feel like that's a real confidence builder. It's not as though I think he's necessarily truly fighting for a spot on the team. I think that's there for him, unless he gives the organization any reason to believe he's not ready. And, a night like that makes you at least think, hey, he can fill a role for us. And we'll see how things go along here. There's still 5 more preseason games and obviously a lot lot more runway on camp. But that's a night I think he's going to be feeling good about. And those are probably the best signs you can look for this early in the preseason.
CJ, is he already agreed to a deal, or is it like we were talking at the beginning of the show? Other teams could watch this guy playing and say, "Oh, he could kind of fit on our third line, and we overlooked this. Let's circle back on it."
Well, yeah, that's the thing. The great thing about being a PTO player is that you're not tied to the organization you're with. I think his situation is a little different. I know he had other interests from other teams, other places he could have went. He chose to come to Toronto. I think both he and the Leafs want this to result in him signing a contract. And quite honestly, it reminds me a couple of years ago. If you remember Zach Aston-Reese, he went through training camp with the Leafs and signed a deal, I think on the eve of the season or the first day of the season, whatever it was. And it was to a specific number. It was a very cap-driven number. I think that's probably what's going to happen here with Pacioretty. I think he wants to be here. He wants to be somewhere he believes he can win a cup and play a role. Which is two boxes I think the Leafs satisfy for him. And again, the only thing I could see getting in the way of that, I suppose, if someone comes in with a stupid offer, or stupid maybe that's my terminology. If someone comes in with a massive offer the Leafs couldn't give him, which I don't think is going to happen. I mean, he came through the summer unsigned to this point, or if he looked like he couldn't play. And the good news for both him and the Leafs is I think they're on the path here to signing him to a deal, sometime before the first game of the regular season.
And if and when that happens, and there's other wingers who are fighting for jobs, what do you think this means for Easton Cowan? What is your read on his future?
Well, right now it doesn't look like he's going to be on the team, right? And I suppose the beauty if you're the Leafs or you're in Cowan's spot is there's time to change that. But I think that he's got to really force his way into the picture, and it's not really a comment on his game last night or what we've seen through the first few days of practice. It's just he's got to really make it difficult on them, and so that's kind of the challenge in front of them. They're certainly not looking for a reason to keep him around, and I don't say that in a bad way. I think he's obviously a very valued prospect, but this is how it goes. I mean, last year Fraser Minton put the Leafs in a spot with the way that they saw him perform through the first 2.5 weeks of camp that they felt they had to keep him around and give him a longer look. And I still think there's time for Ethan Cowan to put his best foot forward, his best skate forward that way, but it's probably not there just yet. And so he's got to show up hungry every day, but I'm sure he will. I mean, he's 19 years old. He's probably loving every minute of being in the NHL right now, and I think management's position on this would be we don't need to have him on the team, but if he shows he has to be there, he'll be there. And so far we probably haven't seen that, but that being said, we're not even a full weekend of camp yet, and so that's kind of what's before Cowan.
With Chris Johnston. So Amazon and the NHL have been working together on this behind-the-scenes series called Face Off Inside the NHL. Premieres in October, and they're starting to leak some stuff out. And McDavid was one of the guys they were following, and there's a clip that they have sent out, and I guess they're promoting, which I find kind of interesting because it really is a behind-the-scenes clip, and it shows a bit of a different light from a guy in McDavid who generally doesn't change and doesn't show much personality, doesn't get too loud. This is him in the room during the Cup final against the Panthers. This is, I believe, audio only, but it is the voice of McDavid. Let's play it.
That's not good enough. The finals. Dig in right now.
Like he's snapping.
I love it, though.
Dig in right now. He's yelling at his team. I love it too. I mean, that's great. But he'll come out tomorrow and talk about it and be like, it is what it is. Like he's not going to say anything publicly. But behind the scenes,
say that wasn't me. That wasn't me.
He may say it wasn't him, but that speaks to. We always talk about captains and what does it mean and what are they going to do and what are they going to say and what do you make of that, CJ? That I guess at least in the room, McDavid's willing to lose his mind every once in a while.
Well, I think all of us hockey nerds, and I'll exclude, I guess, Owen and Noodles from this because they've lived it, but we all want to know a little bit more of what it looks like, right? This is a perfect example. I mean, the biggest games of McDavid and his teammates' lives, and you're seeing that. And, if I can tease it a little bit more, I just actually came from the premiere event. I heard there's a scene that's even more emotional than the one that we just played there, that you see even more from McDavid as this series goes along, just in terms of what it means for him to have a chance to push for a Stanley Cup the way he was trying to bring his teammates along. I think, if you just go by his demeanor, his day-to-day demeanor, if you watch him in interviews, even if you've been on our side of the microphone and had a chance to talk to him, I mean, he doesn't always show you that, right? Makes sense. We all have a lot of aspects to us. I think that this is what the show's meant to do. It's meant to show you a different, a new look into what goes on and how much the players care. And, I had a very senior league official tell me today that any fan that just watches this is going to come away with a different opinion of McDavid than they held before. And I think, what could sell the series better than that? We're trying to understand these guys. We're those of us who haven't lived it or played on a team. I mean, this is special stuff. But I think really what the NHL has managed to do here in this series with Amazon Prime is give us a different level of access than has existed before. And if there's a good part of it, it sounds like there's going to be a second season next year. And so hopefully we're going to see more and more of this stuff, because I think it helps sell the other sports. I mean, anyone who's watched Full Swing or the Drive to Survive F1 series, who's watched this. I mean, for me, I'm not an F1 fan, but I've watched those series and I find them compelling. I think hockey has the same opportunity, and stuff like this is going to make the sport look a little more interesting to you if you don't understand exactly how the rules work. You're going to see the personality aspect, and I think that the NHL feels really strongly that they found that with the players.
That's where I was going to go, CJ. So if they feel like this has gone very well and there is some buzz around it, is this going to be a yearly thing? Are they going to try and add to it? Are they going to have more access? That's really what the fans want. And now with streaming and all of this other stuff, are these companies looking to add more access to the NHL so that everyone can kind of see behind the curtain a little bit more?
Well, unequivocally, that's the hope from everyone involved, from the production company box to box, from the senior NHL leadership. Amazon, I think, wants it to work. I mean, it'll all come down to the fact, the series we're talking about, Face Off, comes out October 4th. Do enough people stream it on Amazon? Like, does it create, it's one thing for us to talk about it, but do people actually watch it and want to watch it and keep that going? If that happens, I don't even think there's a doubt it's going to happen again. Honestly, my view is it's definitely going to happen again. And what's interesting is that, hockey players have had a certain rep, right? Just broadly speaking, players who don't want to stand out from their teams and all these sort of things. What the producers of the show found is that there was a lot there when they got to work with the players themselves. William Nylander is the star of the very first episode of this, along with David Pastrnak. And, what they're saying today is that Nylander was the first player who he just fully signed up. He just basically gave them open license to his house, to his life. He's out there walking with his dog. They came into his apartment when he was missing games in the playoffs, injured. He just granted them full access and didn't say, hey, I have to approve anything. And that set the tone for what's happened here. And so I think that there's a real promising future, frankly, with this sort of concept. And I think we've seen enough other sports find success with it. It would only make sense that hockey would go that road. So, yeah, I think by the time we're talking next year, there'll be a season 2, and there's probably going to be a season 3, 4, 5, assuming the players still want to buy into it.
CJ, at the beginning of the show, we touched on this Swayman situation in Boston. How greasy? It sounds like it could get a little bit greasy. How greasy do you see it possibly getting?
Well, you're kind of in the danger zone now, right? I mean, you're nearly a week into camp. Obviously, the start of camp, call it what you will. It's not a firm deadline, but both sides are trying. Yeah, I think there's a push to try to get something done on both sides of a negotiation if you're an unsigned RFA heading into training camp, because there's obviously benefit to get there, to be with your teammates, to be on the ice for everything that's been happening here in this last few days. And so the longer that doesn't happen, I think it creates more hurdles in a sense, because, what's there to compel them to move off their respective positions? And, I can't say exactly how this is going to go down, but I do think you're getting into a little bit of a dangerous zone, where time has gone along here. Obviously, the Bruins are going through practices. They're playing preseason games now. The season is not that far away. It's just the nature of the way the schedule goes. And I don't think that there's been any movement that in negotiations, that both sides are kind of at where they're at, and they have to find a way to bridge that gap. And so, yeah, I don't know if it's greasy, but it certainly isn't in a good spot. And, with Jeremy Swayman meeting as much to Boston as he does, with the fact they traded Linus Ullmark away to Ottawa in the offseason, I mean, he's got some leverage here. RFAs don't always have leverage. Even William Nylander, if you look back many years ago when he missed all that time, he signed December 1st to the Leafs on his second deal. The Leafs had other skilled players that allowed them to get through that season. And I think that from a management standpoint, they had an ability to say, okay, we're going to negotiate hard here because, the team isn't hurting as much. I mean, it's a different dynamic when you're talking about your number one goaltender. And so, maybe that forces some movement, but so far that movement hasn't happened. And, as a result, Jeremy Swayman's not in Boston, not with his teammates, and they obviously need him if they're going to have the kind of cup run or the sort of successful season they're looking to have.
No kidding. All right, CJ, good stuff. We'll leave it there. We'll do it again next week.
All right, boys. Have a good night.
Chris Johnston joining us here on the Maple Twitter hotline. There's a clip we got to play when we get to Montreal. It's perfect to play there. It's a part of this new Crave series, the rebuild, the Montreal Canadiens series that's up on Crave. And they posted a clip of Jeff Molson, the owner. Did you see the clip where he's walking around? I guess it was opening night last season, and a fan stops him and is speaking to him in French, and the subtitles read. I'm paraphrasing here. We'll play it tomorrow. Basically, that was the worst opening ceremony he's ever seen in his life, and the guy just walks away. And Molson's sitting there with the head of PR. He goes, "Did you just hear that guy? He just said that was the worst opening ceremony." And then they start talking about the ceremony. It's actually really, really interesting and cool that and I appreciate that about Montreal because they have the highest standards, right? Like their opening ceremonies are the best in pro sports. No one touches it.
But to have the jam to go up to an owner say, that's with everything. Like everyone's got. I deal with it every day. I don't like your hair. I don't like your jacket. I don't like this. Like the audacity of, you know what I mean? It's just
I know.
And we're in a position where we have a different kind of world. We're on TV for 3 hours every day, and people can nitpick at us and do whatever they want. But just to go, everyone's got something to say about everything. It's like, how do you can you not keep it to yourself?
But there's
you just couldn't have gone home and say, well, I'm not sure about that. You went and told the owner,
right?
Oh.
But again, the way I appreciate that, and the reason I do, is that's a paying customer. I'm sure it's a season ticket holder that probably pays a fortune. And he's like, "Hey, there's Jeff Molson, and I'm going to let you know. I thought that was terrible."
Yeah, but I guess my question
would be
an
awful opening ceremony. See you later. Au revoir.
That's the thing, Lo. What do you care that much about opening ceremonies? You know what I mean? That's where you're nitpicking about something. It's like, the music's too loud. Oh, this and opening ceremonies. If you're just there to support the team, plus, is this a guy you see Jeff Molson for the first time? Unless he's ran into him 50 times. Mm-hmm. That's what you got to bring to the table?
Now, people think they're owed. People think they're owed that. You see...
I think it's asinine.
Us out in public, and we're in a lesser case, but it's where they're allowed to come up and say, I can't stand the segment you guys did or whatever. And it's just I don't even know you. I don't owe you 2 minutes of my time to listen to you complain about things. And it's the same for Jeff Molson. People are entitled, and they think because they've been Habs fans, that they're entitled for 2 minutes of Jeff Molson's time to go up there and say, I hate the opening ceremony. You should be allowed to block people in real life and just
again,
it's
he can't do that because he's the owner. That's a ticket holder.
Dude,
that's a customer.
I get it.
We're not in the same world because we're no one's technically.
So you think that the fans entitled to go up to Jeff Molson and say that? I think Jeff Molson should be fully entitled to punch that guy in the face.
No.
I swear to God, punch him in the face as hard. Yes, no, it's not.
That's absurd commentary.
No, it isn't. It's not.
That's absurd, and you don't believe that for a second.
Some little Geppetto pissed drunk on Molson export. I'll just sucker him.
No. What you do is, you just gave me an idea. How do you block a person in real life?
Yeah,
you put the hand up.
I guess the hand.
You're
Talk
blocked.
to the hand.
I don't know. That's a real-life block opportunity where it's you're so ignorant, and I just don't want to hear your comments, so you're blocked.
I'm watching it right here. We'll play it tomorrow. The guy walks up to him, and he goes, worst introduction in Canadiens history tonight. And Molson goes, pardon? And the guy just goes, the worst, and walks away. It's actually absurd because this guy really believes Jeff Molson owes him not an explanation.
That's right. Yeah, and an apology.
Well, no, he owes him the ability for him to stand there and listen to the complaint. And then the guy's like, see you later, moving on. Yeah. But you're right, though. If I had access to an owner, I would ask, what are we doing with the team? You know what I mean? If I had 5 minutes, let's say I'm a Habs fan, and Jeff Molson's going to stop me, I would ask directly, are they going to actually do something this year? Like, are you going to make the playoffs? And if not, what happens? You know what I mean? Like, that's a reasonable conversation. The complaint about the opener.
Well, that's right.
To
like,
say
that's
it's the worst in
insane.
history is such a shot.
Sucker.
At everybody that's involved.
But what does it even mean?
I don't know.
I couldn't tell
how
you.
Good
Worst
can you?
in history.
They introduced the players the best in the league. How good? What does
Worst.
this guy want the player
worst.
introductions to sound like?
Unless you're
worst.
Bill Foley and arriving in a helicopter,
Right.
like what do you like? All you're doing is introducing. There's maybe a torch.
Yeah.
The anthem comes out, and like that's it. Like
He was the way this guy sound. It was Chevy guy was on the mic, like
Right.
introducing the players.
That's the impression this guy gave off was as if it was the most amateur production in
Doogie,
history.
find the guy and get him on. Get him on.
no.
Should we get the guy? And maybe he'll be up at Royal Montreal. Like he's just it's amazing piece of television. You have to see it on Crave because the guy just stops him in he's walking by. Hold on a second. I just got to tell you something. The worst in the history of the Canadians. The worst tonight. And Molson's like, pardon? What do you mean? He goes, just the worst. That was awful, and he leaves.
That's it. It's actually ignorant
It's
and
incredibly
classless, but it's just
ignorant.
it's
But
so weird though.
It is just a wild stop and chat.
He must have
Yeah.
been slaughtered. Like
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know
There's
who the guy
no
was.
other way that a guy would go up to an owner and say that unless you were just absolutely pee-tanked.
Oh, it's so
Yeah.
good. And here's the thing that Molson, they interview him on it, like I think the next day. So he's composed. He's thought about how he's going to answer it, and he answers it respectfully. As you know, we'll get it right. There's some things we got to work on because again, that's a Habs fan. You got to be careful if you're in ownership. You can't do what you said and punch the guy out.
Sucker the guy, flat, knock him out.
That is.
Oh, that would be hysterical. On Crave.
Get that on
Episode 3.
Crave.
Jeff
where he
Molson
just
knocks out, Maurice from Laval, who hated
think
the
about
opening
it.
ceremony.
Think about the things we joke around about it on a daily basis, but think about the things that there are people that are out there who don't have the filter that literally will say to somebody on the street, I hate your guts or whatever. I was talking to somebody today, a friend of mine, regardless of how you feel about either a political figure or, a sports figure, like I would never walk up to anybody and be like, I hate your politics. I hate, you may not vote for that person, but
Right.
it's still but there are people that do that.
Oh,
They're
all the
literally
time.
so it's just, it takes a special type of person to do that. Think about this. Jerry Jones, do you think people in Dallas are saying to him, he's walking down the street,
Getting crushed.
get your act together, get your damn act together.
Crushed.
Guaranteed.
Yes.
Guaranteed, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're 1-2. They look terrible. Jerry Jones is absolutely getting crushed.
Right.
And, again, that's about the team and not performing, not about the
Right.
opening ceremony. Hey, I didn't love the anthem tonight. See you
That's
later.
true. Yeah, it is true.
All right, Dave Naylor will join us from Buffalo ahead of the Monday Nighter. Bills, Jags tonight, double shot on TSN. Bengals, Commanders. We'll get to our best bets as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, Dave Naylor coming up later in the hour from Buffalo ahead of the Monday Nighter. Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. You heard us earlier, Jags plus 4.5. We're taking the points. 0-2 teams, they're so desperate. Carolina was 0-2, they won. Baltimore 0-2, they won. Cincinnati 0-2, I think they win tonight, possibly big. I think the Jags show up and at least play desperate ball, and I think they'll push the Bills a bit. I could see the Bills winning this, but I could see it being a field goal game. I'll take the points. Khalil Shakir, 40-plus yards receiving, and Travis Etienne, anytime TD. That's paying plus 384. Today's best bets powered by FanDuel. FanDuel is the home for popular parlays this NFL season. Please play responsibly. 19-plus, physically located in Ontario. All right, 2 games in the NFL tonight. Jays back in action tonight. You've got pennant races going on, playoff races going on. You see the White Sox hit 120 losses. They tied the 62 Mets, and they have
terrible.
6 games left. Like, what do you think the record is in the final 6 games?
They're losing 4 of them.
0-6. Yeah, they're 0-6, man.
0-6?
No, I think they squeak out at least 1 or 2 wins.
I'll say this: if they go if they end up with 126 losses, that might immediately become a record that just is untouchable. immediately because the 62 Mets felt like it was an impossibility anyone would touch that, and that's going back 62 years.
Let's just say one more loss would almost be untouchable for anything to be that bad. And I think Phillips said last week they might be worse next year.
He did. He said he doesn't think they're going to spend any money. They're going to move off any players that have any value whatsoever. And yet, even with that said, I can't picture it. I think they'll hire a new manager. They'll have some young players, and they'll have young, hungry players that will want to play. I think you probably have a lot of veterans who just simply are like, get me out of here. Like, this is so embarrassing. It's done. Let me leave.
Yeah, I know. But, Brian, the owner's got to go, we can't have this again. At least going to try and, you know how you can, if you're a team that's so awful, you can go out and just get average players to make you 100-loss team, you know? Don't you think? That's what I would be doing.
I would think so.
There's no way they could be worse next year.
I don't think they can, Noodles. But at the same time, 120 losses I thought was impossible, and they've done the impossible.
Yeah, I guess.
Dave Naylor coming up again. We're talking about being in Montreal. We're going to be there all week. We cannot wait for that. And the Habs are playing tonight. They have Philly in town. And we want to give a shout-out to John Tortorella. You see they had Mr. Goodrow out on the ice today.
Yeah,
Johnny and Matt's dad coming out to.
That was honestly awesome.
Unbelievable to see.
Let him go out there all year if he wants for practices and have some fun and skate.
Yeah, that was really, really a cool scene. And that is something I'll say about John Tortorella that I don't love the antics all the time post-game. That's just about the game. But by all accounts, Tortorella has always been someone that has treated people well and tried to be a community guy. And,
he's a big
they're from the Philly
patriot.
area, the Goodrows, and really, really cool to let him come out. Very therapeutic by all accounts.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, honestly, I saw that and I thought it was great. And Keith Jones, the president there, that organization, Danny Briere, they're trying. Like I say, they're in a rebuild, retool, but, the Goodrows just live up the road. That's really where they are. So, I mean, to have them down, I think it's a classy move. It gives, Guy an opportunity, Guy Goodrow, to go out and maybe just help out, get your mind off stuff.
Get on the ice, talk to other guys who are out there, players. They probably want to pick his brain too, right? He's seen it all. And
well, not to mention, these are all his peers that loved Johnny, right? That's the thing, and people who get to celebrate. I thought the moment of silence there were throughout the league. There was, a lot, and there's still going to be. I talked to somebody who said that this season will be a season of firsts when it comes to the Goodrows. Because he would have played in the World, the Four Nations Cup, he would, all of that type of stuff, right? So there'll be shout outs for the Goodrow brothers the whole season long.
Absolutely, as there should be.
Yeah.
All right, we'll come back with Dave Naylor live from Buffalo, teeing up the Monday Nighters tonight. Get his take on a couple of games from yesterday as well. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, the Monday Nighter tonight, and don't forget to make your prediction for First Up's Monday Night Jackpot. This is such a cool thing. First Up boys are doing this every Monday through the season. You head to tsn1050.ca and predict the score and winning team of one of tonight's games, either Jaguars, Bills, or Commanders, Bengals, and you only need to predict one of the games. You have until 7 p.m. tonight to make your prediction. If you're right, you could win the jackpot, currently sitting at $1,000. If no one wins, we'll add another $250 to the pot for next week. Full details at tsn1050.ca. First Up, guys, being very charitable. You just got to pick the winner, pick who's going to win it, pick the score, and boom, you're making money. Very simple stuff.
Dave Naylor's a smart guy, and if you bring him in and ask him his prediction for tonight, he will say Buffalo blowout.
Buffalo blowout. That's what you're thinking, Dave's going to say?
I just think Dave's got a good sense of what's going on down there. He'll say Buffalo's going to win.
Yeah, he probably.
All right, let's head down to Buffalo. Here he is, Dave Naylor. Are we leading the witness here, Dave? Do you think the Bills win big tonight?
Now I'm kind of freaked out because I think O-Dog may be reading my text. I literally just texted back to our producer, Dennis Barham. I feel like it could be a Buffalo blowout.
Uh-oh.
I mean, 20 seconds ago. So there you go. O-Dog, good instincts. Yeah, there you are.
Wow.
See that, Hazy? Dave, what makes you say that? Because I've been a little bit, obviously Jacksonville, it just seems like they're fading into irrelevance quickly this year. And they just, Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked great, and it's like, what are you guys? And they just seem to have this weird vibe about them.
Well, let's go back to last year and just look at the trend on these two teams, okay? Jacksonville has lost 7 out of 8 games since, the three-quarter poll of last season, roughly. And that one win was against Carolina, and Trevor Lawrence didn't play. So Trevor Lawrence is on 7 in a row. Remember when the Bills lost to Philadelphia in overtime, I'm going to say late November last year? Mm-hmm. They've lost, once since then, right? And that was against the Kansas City Chiefs by a field goal here. So, you look at the trend over the last 7 or 8 games, Buffalo's lost once, Jacksonville's won once. So that's where I would start. Look at Jacksonville's offense this year. Trevor Lawrence, after week 2, was 28 in completion percentage in the NFL. I believe it's 51%. He's last in third down completion percentage at 21.4%. The Bills are a team that's, Josh Allen can still do the magic stuff here. There are going to be Josh Allen moments sprinkled throughout this season. But the way this offense is, it's not so much dependent on Josh, which means you're not as much going to be undermined by what people see as the downside of Josh Allen. Where occasionally he can get erratic. I think you're seeing his maturation as a quarterback on display earlier this season. I mean, you think of last week, Josh Allen threw for 138 yards, and they scored 31 points. This is a team that's run the ball 58.4% of the time so far this season. They've run it more than they've passed it both games. Just see a lot of arrows up for the Bills and, a lot of arrows down for Jacksonville.
All right, well, that's not good for a crew that picked the Jags plus 4.5 going into a game tonight. Not going to lie to you, Dave, but listen, it does feel like a make-or-break moment, I guess, for the Jags. Like Doug Peterson, do they have any belief in him? But I think the more intriguing conversation is around Lawrence, who, the term generational talent gets thrown around very liberally these days. But when he was at Clemson doing what he was doing as a true freshman, it felt like this guy was going to take the NFL by storm. And you just detailed the stats. This guy doesn't win games. He's not winning football games, and his numbers don't look great. What do you expect from Lawrence tonight, and how important are the next, 10, 12, 15 games of his career here to prove that the Jags have someone they can trust moving forward?
Well, one of the things that will be interesting to see tonight is whether Jacksonville continues to do what it's done the first 2 games of the season, and that is consistently throw the ball deep. That's part of why Trevor Lawrence is at 51% completion percentage. And as I'm sure you guys have noted, that's not exactly the trend in the NFL this year. It's been the opposite. So Jacksonville's a real outlier. Now, another team that's an outlier in that regard is the Miami Dolphins. And the Bills just come off a game where, they held Miami to 10 points. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle combined for 65 yards, which is the lowest total those two have been held to since Tyreek Hill joined the Dolphins. So if you're Jacksonville and you just watch that, the team we think of as maybe the most effective deep ball throwing team in the NFL that couldn't do anything against the Bills defense, are you going to bring that style of game into Orchard Park and try to win that way? Or are you going to try and do it a different way? And look, the Bills defense here, the second level of their starting defense isn't playing tonight. Like they don't have Terrell Bernard, they don't have Matt Milano, and they don't have Taron Johnson. Now, they didn't have 2 of those guys for all of the Miami game, and they had one of them only for the first 2 series of the game when Terrell Bernard went out. But I just wonder whether you're going to see Jacksonville focus on trying to get some matchups against, 3 backups that are the second level of the defense and maybe do things a little differently than they've been the first couple of weeks where it's been kind of an air-it-out team. But I agree with you, Brian. And I think this is part of a larger conversation about these generational quarterbacks that we see come out every year and where it's like automatic. You get handed the ball and you're a week 1 starter. I mean, look at the guys who haven't been week 1 starters. The teams have made weight. Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Love. And then you see all these former first-round picks that, were busts, and then they've had 2 or 3 years on the bench, and they're getting other opportunities, whether it's a Baker Mayfield or a Sam Darnold. You start looking and saying, maybe the best thing for a guy coming right out of college isn't handing him the ball to start in the NFL 6 weeks after the start of his first training camp. Maybe the better investment is, to wait a little bit, make these guys, season a little more than they have because, Trevor Lawrence is one of those guys, right? But I think the real thing is just the drop-off from last year. They were 9-8 in 2022 and made the playoffs, won a playoff game, 8-3 last season. Now, they look like they're cooled out, in the AFC South, and all of a sudden they're on the outside looking in and now facing 0-3 possibly tonight.
No kidding. Yeah, and it's a big opportunity for the Bills because you look at Miami, they went to Seattle, and they just don't have the quarterback play now. Like, it's very clear. They're in big trouble, and without Tua, they're just not going anywhere. And the Jets, they responded well on Thursday. They've responded well the last couple of weeks, but I need to see more out of the Jets. Like, the idea of the Bills going to 3-0 and really taking a stranglehold on this division this early in the year. It's a big statement, Dave. It really is.
Well, it absolutely would be, especially with so much of the speculation and conjecture about the Bills kind of window being closed, and with all the turnover, no Steph Diggs, no Gabe Davis, but I mean they've really embraced this everybody eats mentality, right? And look, I understand because people don't know that much about Khalil Shakir, for instance, right? He's their leading receiver. He's been targeted 8 times, has 8 catches. It's not a high volume guy, but you're going to see his volume grow over the course of the season, I think. And last year, if I asked you guys in the entire National Football League, who had the best catch percentage among all receivers in the NFL last season, it was Khalil Shakir. So no, that's the kind of guy who's in his 3rd year and is certainly, I say he hasn't dropped the ball yet this season. So the Bills, after this, they go to Baltimore. They look beatable. And then you're going to see them in a couple of weeks. They're going to get that showdown on Canadian Thanksgiving, Monday Night Football against the Jets. And that's, I think, they go to Baltimore and then they go to Houston. And so, there's some tough games coming up. But when they go into that game against the Jets, I think that's where we can sort of do a measuring stick of where are we in the AFC East.
With Dave Naylor ahead of the game tonight down in Buffalo, Bills-Jags, there's a double shot of football tonight in the NFL on TSN where the Bengals are at home, also 0-2, and Joe Burrow, you talk about a first overall pick, generational, this and that, great collegiate career. Now they got Washington tonight. They're heavy favorites. It's a must-win. Do you expect that will be the case tonight for the Bengals?
I do. And one of the things about, the NFL, the way the schedule works, there are certain games that we just don't see any of, and you see the score, and you go, I wish I'd seen that game because I'm having trouble imagining what that looked like. Because I watched New England last week, like you guys did, I'm sure, against the Jets. And then I tried to imagine what New England beating Cincinnati looked like. I didn't see that game, right. And it's hard to imagine based on what you saw against the Jets. And look, that you look at what Cincinnati's done. I mean, look, they played at Kansas City, and lost by a sliver on the road, right? So they're not a disaster by any means. And you've seen some of the things they're doing differently on offense, where they're, using the tight end, throwing to Mike Gesicki. They're using multiple tight ends sometimes. So the offense has taken, a bit of an evolution. But I think the 2 knocks that you've had on Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, over the last couple of years are, one, they get off to slow starts. Here we are, 0-2 again, which, everybody says, wow, you can get over 0-2. Well, they couldn't last year. And the other one is, can Joe Burrow stay healthy? Because that's the other thing that has been, the real knock on him over his time in the NFL is that when he's healthy and he's out there, he can do great things. But that's been a challenge as well during his career.
Absolutely. We'll get you out of here on the home front here. The Argos, I guess you could say they blew a game over the weekend. They had a late lead. The Ticats walk them off on a field goal. The Tabbies are, I wouldn't say right behind them in the standings, but it's not a lock the Argos are going to make it here. What do you make of where the Argos are at, and what do you think will transpire the rest of the way?
Well, Argos had a tough schedule, too, to finish the season. And, I think that the thing was that when Chad Kelly was out, they went 5-4. And they basically did it with special teams and defense. There wasn't, they weren't even trying to play the same style of offense that they play when Chad Kelly is there. And they were pretty successful. I mean, I thought that was keeping their head above water. But since they've come back, they're not getting the same level of play on special teams and defense. And Chad Kelly's been, I think he's been okay. He's had some great moments. He's had some not so great moments, kind of what you might have expected from a guy who didn't go to training camp and missed half the season. But, I mean, Hamilton's put up 101 points the last 3 weeks. And done it against Toronto and Ottawa, which are, decent teams. And, Bo Levi Mitchell is kind of buried and, left on the sidelines at one point this season, only got his starting job back when Taylor Powell had a concussion. And all of a sudden you start looking at his stat line. He's thrown for 4,000 yards, got 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. And look, Hamilton's, either to catch Toronto or to cross over into the West, if they could do it that way, if they have a better record than the third team in the West. They got a tough schedule as well. 3 of their 4 opponents are sitting in either first or second place in their respective divisions. So, but it's going to be kind of an exciting finish and maybe a little bit like we saw Friday night, where it was just back and forth right down to the wire.
Absolutely. Let's hope that it's back and forth down to the wire tonight, because we got the Jags plus 4.5, Al's brother and I. Enjoy it, Dave. We'll do it again soon. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Brian, but I don't like your chances.
No, I know. Thank you for that. There's Dave Naylor. Although, you know what? I will say this. Dave knows it better than anybody. Dave's on the ground. Dave's covering this thing. But if Dave's seeing it the same way you're seeing it, though, I don't know, it kind of balances things out a little bit. Right? A little bit, anyway.
Dude.
Yeah, I know. We'll see what happens. Thanks, Dave.
Take care, guys.
There you go. See you, buddy. There's Dave Naylor, live from Buffalo.
I don't know. I don't know how you can look at that game and think anything else but a blowout.
I think Cincy's going to clean him out, but
I need Cincy big. We need Cincy big tonight. Big Bengals fandom tonight. Yeah. But it's a wild start to the season in the NFL, and the Leafs are playing again. The Jays are playing. We're off to Montreal tomorrow, right? We're going to be at Royal Montreal tomorrow at 4:00. Cannot wait for that. It's going to be an awesome week from the President's Cup. So we're going to have you covered all week from Montreal, and we appreciate everything today. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. Everyone for tuning in. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at...
See you in the Belle Province, 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.